Okay, welcome everybody to here. My name is Gemma Lloyd, I'm General Manager here, and we're delighted to have Faisal Abdu'Allah here today with his willing assistant, Mark. As you probably noticed when you came into the gallery today, we looked a little bit like a hair salon this weekend. And that's because Shoreditch Trust and University Arts London have been running a creative mentoring scheme with 10 mentees over the last 6 months, and some of them are here today. And so they've been working over the last 6 months with creative industries across the borough of Hackney, and have been producing work that's taken on a hair theme, I suppose you could say. And that's perhaps because Hoxton Street has got a multitude of hairdressers and barbers. So it seemed rather fitting for them to invite Faisal here today, because Faisal, as well as being an internationally recognised artist, is also a barber and has a hair salon in Harlesden.
So yeah, I got a call some years ago by Jessica Borsander. Some of you may know her, and she was teaching at Canterbury. And she asked me to come in and do a performance. And I was like, excuse me? It's the first thing I said to her on the phone, performance? I don't do performance. She said, no, all of our visiting lecturers are coming in and doing a performance in the form of a talk. I goes, what do you want me to do? I don't dance, I don't sing, I don't take my clothes off, And she says, no, can you come and maybe cut hair? I said, what? Cut hair at university? She said, yeah, and maybe do a talk. So, turned up, and I think my son was off school. He was sick, right? Yeah. He was about that big at the time, not short. And I started doing this talk in one of the studios while I was cutting his hair, and it just kind of worked. And then what happened was about a year and a half later, she then said to me that could I come and do it for the British Art Show? So, oh, that's nice. And they put me up in the Dan Graham Pavilion, and I did it there. And then it just kind of kept going on. People saying, can you come and do it here? And then, whilst I was being a student, it was a very surreal experience. It almost feels like here now, where I'm cutting hair, something that I know, and I was essentially based in my the black community. And I was hearing their stories, and I was hearing their fables, and I was hearing their love stories, their stories of hate. And then on Monday I'd go to university. Liverpool College, and we're talking about Freud and Foucault, Nietzsche, and I was like, okay. And then straddling these two worlds was very hard to reconcile. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to compress the two and put it in together, and began to utilize the stories and narratives from the shop in the work. So when I did a project some years ago called Goldfinger, and I managed to access the British Mafia. So through a haircut. So I managed to get access to Freddie Foreman, Howard Marks, Roy Shaw, and I photographed these guys for 4 years and did a project for Goldfinger and printed it onto 24 karat gold. And all the gold plating was done in a barber shop in the basement. I should never have done it because I never had any ventilation. And I was having what I know now to be as hallucinations. Well, I was gold plating and the fumes was like in the shop. So, and Goldfinger came about because I was fascinated by the idea of looking at circles of loyalty. But when I first met Joey Pryor, I had no idea how to broker that relationship with him once I met him, and how to get close to him to get his permission to take photographs. And what I realized was when I met his son, Mitch Pryor, who made the introduction, I noticed that he cut his hair himself. So after he introduced me to his father, I ran up Mitch Pryor and I said, Mitch, do you want to come for a haircut? Look, you want, come for a haircut. And he came for a haircut, and I cut his hair for 4 weeks, every week. And then on the 4th week, I asked him if it was okay to take his picture. He's like, you're all right, you can take my picture. Went downstairs in my studio, and I had everything set up like that. Camera, lights, backdrop. I had it set up for 4 weeks in the hope that he would say yes 1 week. And he came down and sat, took a photograph, And as I looked at the lens on my Hasselblad, and he was sitting there looking at me, I thought, this is the whole thing done. I did the shot, and then printed it, put it onto the gold plate, invited him back to the studio. Then he called his dad while he was in my studio and said, Dad, I need to see this. The following day, I got a call from Joey Brown. We drive the gold plate over to his house in East Sheen. I take it out of the car, I go into the house, we unveil it, he looks at it, and he just walks towards me, and I kind of move back, and he kisses me, hugs me, offers me a cup of tea, and then we go through his 11 most loved people in his circle. And he made a list: Freddie Foreman, Roy Shaw, Howard Marks, Big Albert Chapman. And from that point, it took me 4 years to get all of those photographs. I went to their homes, big mansions, I went to I don't want to say it, I went to strip clubs, different places, just to try and get just to try and get the images. So for me, it was an interesting journey to see how that circle of loyalty kind of played out. And for the girls, the hair was very knotty, it was very kinky. And that would have a kind of psychological effect on them, because they didn't go to school with their hair, it took like an hour to home. And they were sitting next to their friend at the school who had straight hair, long hair, and they were doing this, and they'd be flashing it. And how that plays out in film culture, how it plays out in the magazines, how it plays out in having long, straight hair, you know, gives you that allure to make you much more sexual, it makes you much more kind of accepted, it kind of, they say it makes your hair easy and more manageable. And that played into a lot of young girls around me when I was growing up. My relatives who decided to use the hot comb to make their hair straighter. And then from the hot comb, which is a temporary way of making your hair straight, to the live relaxer, which would make it straight for like 3 months. You know, and that stuff would probably burn your scalp sometimes, take a bit of the skin off. I mean, it was quite aggressive. Then how that plays into the mind of the person that you're possibly forming a relationship with. So then you had men, you know, dating women that had transformed their hair, I'll say it in a very polite way, transformed their hair, and then they would enforce that transformation on the daughter that they would then have. Why is my daughter having hair that's curly and nappy like that? I want her hair to be straight just like yours. So the cycle keeps continuing. I think there is a politics definitely that one can align to women, and black women in particular. One conversation I had some time ago was, it was like a hair conference, and they asked me to just come and just talk about the politics of the barbershop. And the conversation that came out of that discussion was that the women said that they had this like a graph or a mental map of how they would define black women. So they said black women that had their hair like this lady here, they would say that she was a BA student. So not necessarily studying a Bachelor of Arts degree, but a BA student. A lady that had her hair in twists, so not necessarily locks, but twists and out, but they're natural, be an MA student. Yeah? They see them as an MA student. See them on the street, she's an MA student, man, she's almost there. And then the lady that had her hair in dreads and locks, she was a doctor. Yeah? But the funny thing was, women that had their hair processed they weren't even on the scale. And they saw that purely through consciousness. You know, they were measuring somebody's capacity or their intelligence through how they audited their hair. The one that I used to work in when I was learning how to cut hair, we had gay and lesbian couples would come in, but the guy who used to own the shop, he wasn't having it. He didn't want them in there. He's like, excuse me? He would, I just don't know how he managed to trade for those years, having that kind of ideology. And now, you know, the shop I work in, we have, you know, loads of gay and lesbian couples coming in, and it's absolutely fine. And it just shows how the clients themselves feel towards it, because they're not even batting an eyelid. Because back in the day, it was an issue in the black community for gay and lesbian couples coming in the barbershop.
It's interesting how the hairstyle of everyone, non-black women also implicates their sexuality. Like I suggested to my boyfriend that I should cut my hair short because I think it suits me, and he said, "But you're not a lesbian."
Is that what he said?
Yeah, I'm very happy with yeah, this is how.
But I think there are some connotations associated with some hairstyle,
Yeah.
like as seems that I've never relaxed my hair. Some people would have assumed that I'm transitioning from process to natural, or they think that I'm in some black power movement, or maybe a lesbian or something like that. It's just some connotations associated with it.
And what's funny is that I was asked to participate in a conversation in Wisconsin, and she was a student there, and she wanted me to participate because black people in Wisconsin are very rare, and black people with an afro even more rare. So she said she'd be like traveling through Wisconsin, people would come up to her and say, "Can I touch you?" And that would drive her crazy. So it was an interesting kind of conversation that was being had about the idea of texture, I think, in a way, the idea of texture.
And his hand was draped all over her lap, and I couldn't imagine him doing that if it was a man braiding his hair. Besides, I can't imagine him another black man braiding another black man's hair.
But was
okay.
So was this being braided in a shop or in a?
No, it was in the privacy of the home.
Now, what I think is interesting about the braiding of hair is when, and this is, I've had colleagues, friends of mine that had their hair braided, and their wife braids their hair with a girlfriend, then they have an argument. He has to go and get his hair braided someplace else. So when he comes home with his hair braided, she'll be like, "Where did you get your hair done?" It's not like, "Oh, your hair looks nice." Where did you get your hair done? Because when you're braiding at home, I know this sounds really strange, but the man has to sit between the woman's legs. And he sits like with his back to her, because sometimes it's more comfortable. So the wife or the girlfriend knows that whoever braided this person's hair was sitting in close proximity, and maybe her cleavage may be touching his back, but there is a certain degree of intimacy which creates an issue. So I think the whole idea of a woman, a man's hair being done by a woman, does create those problems, especially when it's being braided. I think it's being cut, the space is completely different.
My mum used to cut my two brothers' hair when they were little, but this is like before they came to secondary school. So like after they started to go to secondary school, they learned about like getting that kind of line at the front and make sure it's straight. So then after they're like, no, mum, I'll go barber to get it done, because like they want that freshness of it when you go to the barbers instead.
And for me, what's really funny sometimes is some mums send their child to the barber shop with the money in their hand and it's just a prescription. Are they that brave? So yeah, but what's really also nice is that some of them send their kids there for years. I mean, I cut this kid the other day. I mean, this kid could not be no more than like, he's about this tall, he said he was 11. But he must have been 11 because he was super smart. I was like, how does this kid be so small and be so intelligent? He's 11. But he came on his own, came with exact money, said exactly the hairstyle he wanted. And what was interesting is what the hairstyle sometimes demonstrates the kind of school that they go to. Some of the schools won't allow a certain kind of hairstyle. Like I know some of the schools, my son goes to school with this, they're sending him home. They believe, it's like some of the pubs in Hackney now don't allow you to go with a tracksuit. Because they're thinking, we want to have a certain kind of clientele in here, and a pub backs onto an estate, and we don't want certain kids in here, so therefore we can't wear a tracksuit. And never forget, I was coming outside this restaurant in Hackney, and this guy was standing there arguing with the bouncer. Then he called me and he says, "Brother, look, my tracksuit is £300, and I can't go into the restaurant. What are they talking about here? I live in this area." And you can see how he was so kind of upset by this changing policy. And he said, "I could go to Primark, and buy a top for like £5 and a pair of shoes for like £1, and they let me in, for my £300 tracksuit, I can't come in here with it." So for me, it was kind of, I can't really help you. But it was really interesting, and I was thinking back to the whole idea of what happens in the school, with how it talks about the different hair policies that they have. And I learned that the policies are really thought through, and the parents are too weak to even challenge it. So, let's see somewhere.
One final question for so I don't know your name. Anna.
Yeah.
I said, would you ever like, because the let your hair grow out, maybe like into an afro or something?
I would love to, but he doesn't let me.
But you should go for a little walk, go a little
Awesome.
Very nice.